Hola, hola. Here we are going to review el presente, the present tense, old school Spanish 1 stuff. Yeah? Some of it's going to look really, really familiar, and others of it is going to look brand new. Okay. So the sheet you see right here is your answer key or your organizer, your cheat sheet, however you want to refer to it. But it has everything that you need to know for the present tense. Okay. AR verbs that are regular have these endings. ER verbs that are regular have these endings. IR verbs that are regular have these endings. ER and IR verbs have very similar endings. The only differences appear in the nosotros and the vosotros rules. Vosotros for all forms carries an accent mark. The accent mark for AR verbs goes on the A, for ER verbs goes on the E, for IR verbs goes on the I. Okay? Our first category of irregular verbs we call yo-goes or go-goes, depending on your teacher. We'll all call it something different. Here we are, yo-go verbs. Okay. We saw an example the very first day when we started this with the verb oír. In their yo, present tense conjugation, there is a go ending. Oigo, pongo, tengo. Those are three verbs you know very well. Hago, digo as well. Okay. These are just a few of the verbs that follow that rule. These are not all of the verbs, but these are most that you are going to find in your Spanish 3 study. Okay. Yo, go, because the go only appears in the yo form. Oye, pone, tenemos. None of those forms include the yo-go rule. Okay. The next category are stem changing verbs. Stem changing verbs can be E to I, E to IE, E to I, or O to UE. There is one very unique verb, jugar, which stem changes from U to UE. Only one in the whole language, okay? But here we have the verb preferir. In its stem, there, we're going to change that E to an IE in the conjugation forms, the four of them that are inside the gray shaded area. We call stem changing verbs boot verbs because if you can visualize this chart, the irregularities will occur inside the boot or inside the gray part of the conjugations chart. Here are some other verbs that also follow the E to IE stem changing rules. Inside the boot. Outside the boot, no stem change. Notice the nosotros form preferimos. FER looks just like the infinitive FER. Okay, so same rules apply to E to I stem changers like the verb pedir, to ask for or to order. Repetir, seguir, servir, these are all verbs that also have a stem change. This change is only one letter to another letter, so the PED changes to PID inside the boot, but not outside the boot. Nosotros and vosotros look just like the infinitive PED. The verb seguir and the verb decir, listed as two examples of IE stem changes, are also yo-go verbs, as noted in parentheses. Sigo, yo sigo, S-I-G-O. Okay. The verb volver will show us what to do with O to UE stem changers. Volver or devolver, to return. Vuelvo, vuelves, nosotros volvemos. Okay, so inside the gray area, we have conjugations that include an O to UE stem change. Outside of the boot, we have just the regular VO, not VUE. Some other examples of O to UE stem changers are listed below. As mentioned earlier, there is only one very famous verb, jugar, which changes its stem from U to UE. Juego, not jugo al baloncesto, pero juego. Jugo means juice. You would never include that as part of a verb. Juego, juegas, pero nosotros jugamos. The only verb that changes U to UE. The next category of verbs you see here, the next 5, are all irregular verbs. There is no pattern like we have seen thus far. These verbs just are this way, and this is the way it is. So we have the verb ir, to go. Here are its present tense forms. Then the verb ser, to be, its present tense forms. The verb dar, to give. Estar, to be. Oír, to hear. We saw oír earlier as well as one of the oigos, one of the go yogos. Some other important verbs to note. Saber, in its yo form, is irregular. We say yo sé el español, yo sé contar, yo sé jugar al béisbol. Sé, I know how to do this thing, or I know this information. Ver, yo veo. Doesn't follow any regular patterns. Just make sure you know they're irregular yo forms. Okay? Continuing on, we have verbs that work like the verb gustar. You know you would never say yo gusto. You say me gusta. Me gusta, me gusta. Other verbs that work this way, aburrir, to be bored, interesar, to be interested, importar, to be important, molestar, to bother. There are many others that can be added to this list, but this is just what you need for now, okay? We say me gusta or me gustan. The N, is only ever used with a plural noun that follows it. Me gustan los tacos. Me gustan las canciones de Juanes. Only with a plural noun following. Otherwise, you use gusta. Okay? Our next category is definitely a category of verbs we have seen before. The only problem is that we've only ever seen it in the preterite tense. So when you're being asked to conjugate it in the present tense, this might get a little bit tricky. You have reference here. You also can use word reference as well to help you along with these types of verbs. So we have this category of UIR verbs, okay? But it excludes GUIR. So if there are verbs like the list you see here that end in UIR, without a G in front, like seguir, that would be excluded here. UIR verbs alone, like incluir, distribuir, construir, destruir. The verb huir, to flee, also applies here. What you're going to do is add a Y after the U in all forms except for nosotros and vosotros. So it's kind of like a boot verb, but you're changing the spelling. We call these spelling changers. The next category of spelling changers has to do with GER and GIR verbs. Again, verbs you've seen before, verbs you've used before, just never in the present tense. We just had in Unit 2 future and conditional with proteger, escoger, elegir, the first 3 verbs on this list, but you never conjugated it in the present. So what you need to know about GER verbs and GIR verbs is that in the present tense, in the conjugation of the yo form, we include a J. Yo protejo, J-O. Yo escojo, J-O. Yo elijo, stem changer and a J. Yo corrijo. If you left the G as it was in front of an O, turns it into a hard G sound. So incorrectly, you might say yo protego. Eek, protejo. Soft G, proteger, like the H, must have a soft sound in the actual conjugation as well. Protejo. Protego doesn't seem like it came very close to proteger. Next category and last category of spelling changers, again, with verbs you've seen before, used before, but perhaps never in the present tense, so it seems new to us. This category of verbs are verbs that end in CER and CIR. In the yo form in the present tense, verbs that end in this combination of letters will now change to ZCO as its present tense ending for yo and yo only. Conocer becomes conozco, producir, conduzco, producir, produzco, traducir, traduzco. Any verbs that end in CER, CIR, in the yo form and in the yo form only, will now add this combination of a ZC to its ending.